With summer in full swing, I feel that familiar urge to refresh my closet, but I'm not trying to waste money on pieces that I'm going to wear once or for just one season. And that's where Quince comes in. Their clothes are timeless, feel luxurious, look elevated, and the quality is way beyond what you'd expect for the price. I just got a white linen maxi dress. Now, if I had paid for that dress in a department store, I would have paid $170. Well, guess what? I got it for $69. And by the way, that same dress comes in blue pinstripe. Think 100% European linen top starting at $30. Washable silk dresses and skirts and soft cotton sweaters. Versatile warm weather pieces that you're going to reach for again and again. And the best part, everything with Quince is half the cost of similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middlemen, Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. So you've got to give your summer closet an upgrade with Quince. Go to quince.com/Kate Casey for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/Kate Casey to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Kate Casey.
Avoiding your unfinished home projects because you're not sure where to start? Thumbtack knows homes, so you don't have to. Don't know the difference between matte paint finish and satin? Or what that clunking sound from your dryer is? With Thumbtack, you don't have to be a home pro. You just have to hire one. You can hire top-rated pros, see price estimates, and read reviews all on the app. Download Thumbtack today.
The amazing Kate Casey.
Welcome back for another episode of Reality Life with Kate Casey, and I've got a true crime episode for you today. My guest today is Emmy-winning and Academy Award nominated director Joe Berlinger, one of the most influential voices in true crime storytelling. He joins me to discuss his latest Neflix docuseries, Conversations with a Killer, the Son of Sam Tapes, a 3-part deep dive into one of the most terrifying chapters in New York City's history. The series revisits the case of David Berkowitz, better known as the Son of Sam, who paralyzed the city with fear between 1976 and 1977. Over the course of a year, Berkowitz shot 13 people, killing 6 in seemingly random nighttime attacks targeting young women and couples parked in cars. Born Richard David Falco in 1953 and adopted shortly after birth by Nathan and Pearl Berkowitz, David grew up in the Bronx. He struggled with feelings of abandonment, social isolation, and anger from a young age. After the death of his adoptive mother, whom he was very close to, his mental health rapidly declined. Berkowitz later claimed that he was driven to kill by demonic voices, including one that came from a neighbor's possessed dog. His letters to the press taunted police and sparked panic, while his erratic and symbolic messages suggested a mind unraveling. Diagnosed with paranoid, schizophrenia, and antisocial personality disorder, Berkowitz remains one of the most enigmatic figures in American criminal history. Conversations with a Killer, the Son of Sam Tapes, brings this chilling story to life with newly unearthed audio recordings, firsthand accounts from detectives, journalists, and survivors, and a look at how media frenzy, public fear, and psychological disturbance converge to create a nightmare. Joe Berlinger takes us inside the making of the series and into the dark psyche of a killer who haunted New York and left behind scars that never fully healed. Here's my interview. Joe, I always love seeing you. You come up with the most interesting true crime docs. I know everyone's going to be thrilled that you're back with me because you have a way of finding new angles to some of these cases that have been long talked about. So first of all, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Great to be back. How are you doing?
I'm good. I was interested in this story because I think there's so many layers that kind of remind me of other cases. Like this often reminds me of the DC sniper case, and then parts of it are reminding me of the Kohberger case in the way that Berkowitz just pled guilty as well. So I think the first question I have is, what drew you to this case, and why did you feel like now was the right time to revisit it?
Great question. I've always been fascinated by this case for so many reasons. Just anecdotally, as a teenager, when I was around 14 or 15 when this case happened, and I was just amazed at the fear that gripped the city, how everyone couldn't wait for the next, newspaper headline to come out, a very different time in media, of course. My first love, which some people know who know me for a long time, my first love actually was magic. Like I was an avid magician as a young kid. You're probably wondering, where is he going with this? But but magic was my first love, and there was a magic store, like the most famous magic store was in Times Square.
Oh.
Or Broadway, very close to Times Square. And my parents used to let me go into the city starting at the age of 13 in a New York that was just a total wreck. Like I lived in the suburbs. You take Metro North into Manhattan. Harlem was just one burned out building after the other. I mean, New York was in such a state, a lot of police layoffs, lots of crime, lots of drugs. Times Square was a total cesspool of sex, drugs, and, you name it. In fact, there was another serial killer active around this time, Richard Cunningham, which is the subject of my show, Crime Scene, the Times Square Killer. And I just marveled at what looked like an apocalyptic New York, even though I used to run in and buy my magic tricks and go home. And so Berkowitz, when he hit the scene, that was this, there was a blackout, New York didn't have the policing ability to handle all the crime. I just have always been mesmerized by this case. And now connecting the dots many years later, having done what I do, I actually view the Son of Sam case as kind of one of the foundational cases that you can trace to today's popularity of true crime.
Yeah.
Berkowitz manipulated the media, wanted that attention. The two New York tabloids, the Post and the Daily News, were only too willing to comply. When Berkowitz was caught, more newspapers were sold on that day in New York City than for the assassination of JFK. So to me, it kind of foreshadowed this confluence of violence, media fascination, media manipulation of these terrible stories, and just the public's just can't get enough of it. So that's one reason it's interesting, and a reason to revisit. But also, the case for me has a particular cultural touchstone, which when I started thinking about doing this, I realized just how many people still believe this idea.
Yeah.
I hate to say conspiracy theory because I don't want to offend people, and people should believe what they want, I suppose. But not I suppose. People should believe what they want. The I suppose part is that sometimes false beliefs lead to a lot of harm. And that's the point I want to make, is that the thing I'm most well known for, obviously, is, well, I shouldn't say obviously either, but the thing I'm most well known for is Paradise Lost, which was, 3 teenagers in rural Arkansas accused of these devil worshipping murders. Mm-hmm. And they were sent to death row, 1 on death row, 2 life without parole, with virtually no forensic evidence, because they were swept up in this era of satanic panic, where people just believed there was a nationwide, cult. There were multiple satanic cults, to the point where the FBI had to come out and say in the mid-90s, not a single child murder or child abduction can be traced to satanic cults. And yet we had the McMartin case, the Little Rascals daycare case, the West Memphis 3 case. Lives were completely destroyed over this satanic hysteria. And one of the original treatises in this regard was Maury Terry, a journalist, wrote a book, The Ultimate Evil, an investigation into America's most dangerous satanic cult, postulating that there were multiple Son of Sam shooters. This book came out in 1987 and kind of, I don't want to say is solely responsible, but it was like one of the many I think, highly irresponsible reports out there that made people feel like there was this nationwide network of satanic cults. Mm-hmm. And these ideas still persist today. That I was shocked when I started getting into it, just how many people still believe that there were multiple sons of Sam. They all belong to a satanic cult. And this is the larger reason for the killings. And we live in a world now where people can't agree on the basic facts of virtually everything. That's one of the problems we have in society. And so I'm always on the lookout for setting the record straight. And there's just so many reasons I don't think this theory is realistic, but it came at a particular time that I personally observed in the courtroom the destructive power of these false narratives. So for me, it's always an opportunity to set the record straight. So that's another thing that I was interested in. Why now? And then the other why now for me is that, I liken Berkowitz. It's interesting you referenced that you see him more like a Koberger, because I too, this is the 4th season of our ongoing series called Conversations with the Killer. We've done Bundy, Gacy, Dahmer. Mm-hmm. And I view Berkowitz more like a school shooter than one of these sadistic, and obviously what he did was terrible, so there's no condoning it, and killing is killing, and you can't qualify which killing is less worse. I mean, it's all horrible human behavior, but traditionally serial killers, particularly Bundy and Gacy, literally enjoyed the intimacy with their victim and were sexually gratified by the act of killing and watching that person expire in front of them. Oh. And it's all horrible. Dahmer, he still wanted the intimacy with his victim to the point where he consumed the body parts, but I don't think he got off on actually the act of killing because he knocked them out. But it's still this intimacy with another human being and the act of killing being so gratifying. Berkowitz was like, if he got to know the person, if he was too up close and personal, like this early killing where he tried to knife somebody, or there's an anecdote in the show where he came upon people who were stuck in the snow and he helped them, even though he had a gun in his pocket, because he had a human interaction and just felt it was better to be a hero than a killer by helping these people. So he's more in the category of the school shooter, the alienated, detached person who feels disconnected. And because we have a crisis of mental health these days with young people, I thought focusing on that and putting this out there, is a good time. It's why I included a little bit of an interview with him at the end of the show with me actually interviewing him, which kind of breaks the pattern of these shows. Generally, the killer is dead by the time we do the show, and we solely rely on the tapes. And I debated whether or not to put a present day interview of me with Berkowitz in the show. But because he said that, because I asked him if you could talk to the young David, what would you say? And he said, run, get help. I could have talked to my father. Mm-hmm. I think that's a very important message, get help. So anyway, those are all, I know that was a super long-winded answer, but that was, these are all the reasons why I thought now is a good time to retell this story.
This show is sponsored by Liquid IV. I'm soaking up the last bits of summer while feeling the pull back to routine. I've been enjoying going on a ton of hikes, and it's really important to stay hydrated. Liquid IV is easy and it's convenient. You just tear, pour, and enjoy. Just one stick and 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Staying hydrated is so important, especially in the heat, fueling up for sports, feeling yourself after a long trip, or even a night out. Now, remember that delicious popsicle that you would get at a summer birthday party? Well, Liquid IV has captured that taste with the Orange Vanilla Dream Hydration Multiplier. It's going to remind you of that popsicle. That nostalgic vanilla flavor with notes of candied orange can help you feel hydrated better than water alone. Again, grab your water, tear, pour, and enjoy, and stay hydrated this summer. Visit liquidiv.com, and I want you to use the code Kate Casey at checkout for 20% off your first order. Again, visit liquidiv.com and use code Kate Casey at checkout for 20% off your first order.
Hear that? That's the sound of Cinnamon Toast Crunch telling us it's crunch time as we gear up for another year of cereal training camp. Last year, a dynamic brother duo competed and won the right to make their very own cereal. They named it the Kelsey Mix. This summer, the energy is being brought straight from the end zone to the breakfast aisle with 3 cereal-loving wide receivers: Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jamar Chase. You can find these football stars on limited edition cereal boxes of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Lucky Charms, Honey Nut Cheerios, and Reese's Puff cereal starting in August. And don't miss out on Justin Jefferson's Jetta's Mix, a fruity fusion of frosted lemon Cheerios and Cinnamon Toast Crunch strawberry for a limited time only. Be sure to score them all, where every bite tastes like a touchdown.
The Kohberger part too that reminded me of him, to your point of the fanaticism about like the satanic cults, which by the way has permeated in a lot of cases as far reaching as the Amanda Knox trial in Italy.
Yeah.
And they were perpetuating this story that the children that lived in that house, and they really were like kids, college kids, that they were drug dealers, reminded me of that inflated story about satanic cults, how like someone's irresponsible narrative, how that can trickle into news media and then really change the way people think about a case. And then the other part was when Berkowitz pleads guilty, it kind of like, when someone pleads guilty, I used to think, well, if they're doing that, they're going to cut off any opportunity to extend the length of a story because there's no trial.
The difference between Kohberger and Berkowitz is that Kohberger and his defense team have dragged this out for several years, constant delays, causing massive pain for the families, allowing these false narratives to fester. And I think at a certain point, it's become, they obviously have some compelling evidence, we will see. After dragging these families through 3 years of delays and court actions, he finally decided to plead guilty, whereas Berkowitz, it wasn't even a consideration. He wanted ownership of these crimes. He wanted to be the big guy. He wanted the recognition. There's that great anecdote, from William Gardella, one of the arresting officers. They're sitting in they're driving from Yonkers to NYPD headquarters, and they're pulling up, and there's a whole gaggle of press waiting, to take their pictures of the infamous Son of Sam. And he's got a big smirk on his face. And he asked Gardella if he had a comb so he could, fix his hair,
Yeah.
Is an amazing story. Berkowitz at least didn't put people through the hell of denials the way Kohberger did.
To your point about the connection to someone like the profile of a school shooter, so much of his story and hearing the tapes is about his identity or lack of an identity. Do you think that his birth story has a big part of that?
It does and it doesn't, in the sense that that can't be an excuse, but that's, but it's more of a justification, that's the thing that one will never know. When people come up with these excuses, well, I had a bad childhood. Well, I was adopted, evidently Bundy, the adoption story, when he finally realized he was adopted, was so earth-shaking to him that it prompted him to do these things. I don't buy that, because most children who find out they're adopted don't become killers. Honestly, to be personal, I had a very rough childhood. I had an abusive father who was emotionally and physically abusive to everyone in our family. His father was abusive to him. So, you could say that, gee, the likelihood of me being an abusive person was high. If you ask my daughters, they will tell you that I'm the nicest guy. My wife is the disciplinarian and I'm a pusher.
Yeah.
And, luckily, I guess I've used crime as a way of exorcising, some of my demons in my childhood. But like, it's one of the reasons I'm so fascinated with the genre. It's like, what makes people crack? Because I could tell you some stories of what happened to me as a child that would, raise the hairs on the back of your neck. And yet I think I'm a very nice, successful person who people generally like dealing with. And I haven't done anything terrible in my life. So like, I don't always buy those. Obviously it was a contributing factor, but if it wasn't that, what would be the other contributing factor? It's like, it's fascinating with Dorothy Lewis's research about like brain abnormalities of people who are killers. They lack a physical chunk of their brain that, where empathy is supposed to reside, Yeah. So it was a factor, but if it wasn't that, maybe it would be something else. Because again, finding out you're adopted, finding out you were given up because your mother was having an affair, finding out your mother is not who you had hoped it would be when he learns she's alive and tracks her down. Are those excuses? Are those precipitating events? I'm not smart enough to know, but I would venture to say that these people who do these horrible things would do it, whether it's this excuse or that excuse,
Were there any challenges as you began this project in, all of the archival materials, but also getting access to some of the participants?
There were a couple of victims who, I think it's very important to reach out to victims and make sure it's okay to do the show. I've canceled shows where victims say, oh, if you do this. In fact, there's a recent example that I was developing something, very famous cold case. I don't want to say who to protect the people, but, we were reached out and they said the family wants nothing to do with this. The family wants the victim's children to have a normal life. Please don't do this. So when I hear that, I will cancel a show. In fact, I had a movie, if you Google Facing the Wind from about 15 years ago, it's a book by Julie Solomon. I had a $5 million budget, which, not the biggest budget, but enough to make a movie. It was cast with Evan Rachel Wood, Vera Farmiga, and Alejandra Nivola. And it's a particular story, where a key person involved who had granted the interview to the author, Julie Solomon, who I had conversations with. I optioned that book, had a screenplay written, raised the money, cast the film. But I was reached out to and said, listen, my life has changed since we last spoke. I have a new job. This would absolutely destroy my life. Please don't do it. I canceled the project. So I always want, not everyone is happy, like sometimes shows come out and then somebody will say, oh, I hate this show or whatever. But I try to do these things responsibly. I try to get victim, participation. I think that's obviously super important. I was happy and gratified that several victims agreed to do the show, and several just didn't want to go on camera, but they didn't say to me anything alarming like don't do the show. So I was, I think we have several victims in the show, which is good. I think that's important.
Why are there ridges on Reese's peanut butter cups? Probably so they never slip from her hands. Could you imagine? I'd lose it. Luckily, Reese's thought about that. Wonder what else they think about. Probably chocolate and peanut butter.
Movie night, date night, or solo marathon, IMDb is your ultimate entertainment companion. Discover new favorites, rate what you've watched, and never miss an episode with the free IMDb app. Curate your watch list with a tap. Get personalized notifications for your favorite shows. And find your next must-watch movie or series. From blockbusters to hidden gems, we've got you covered. Download the app now, register for free, and find your next favorite.
Did any of them look at any part of this case differently as time has gone on?
Well, I do think for one of the victims, the idea that there were multiple sons of Sam is still something that they think is a very strong possibility. And that's why one of the reasons I just think it's so irresponsible for people to tell this narrative. I always look for what is this, whenever I do a true crime, the true crime is obviously has very mixed reputation, has lots of detractors and a lot of people who love it, but the truth is there is a lot of irresponsible true crime. There is true crime that simply wallows in the misery of others for the sake of telling a story. So I always ask myself, what is the needle we can move here, whether it's setting the record straight, whether it's, my shows have identified new victims of serial killers, for example. So when people say you should just not do serial killer shows because you're giving them a platform, I don't think I'm giving someone a platform. And I don't think, there's a whole range of human behavior that we make shows about. We make shows about adult, whatever, content, books, movies, whatever, not just documentaries, but we tell stories of adultery. We tell stories of greed. We tell stories of dishonesty. Well, killing another human being for no reason other than to kill them is a particularly human trait. Why do we say we don't want to tell those stories? As long as you're respectful to victims and you're truthful. And so I always ask myself, what's the needle I can move here? Is it identification of new victims of serial killers? Is it a cautionary tale? My daughter's generation, when I decided to do the Ted Bundy tapes, I asked my daughters, who were both college age, typical, prototypical, Bundy victim profile, young collegiate women with, shoulder length hair. And I said, do you know who Ted Bundy is? And neither one of them knew. I had one daughter about to enter MIT, another daughter graduating from Columbia. So these are smart women. Mm-hmm. And neither one of them knew who Ted Bundy was. And so I said, hey, text some of your friends, see if they know who Ted Bundy is. And for the most part, there's a very smart cohort of women and some guys. One guy thought he was a baseball player, but generally speaking, nobody knew who Ted Bundy was. And so what is the lesson? Ted Bundy? Just because somebody is charming and good looking doesn't mean you should trust him. This was around the time that some poor victim got into a fake Uber and was murdered. Like, people pretend to be one thing and they're another.
I interviewed that family. Yep.
Yeah. So I felt really great about retelling. I mean, what Neflix is so great at is, reaching a younger global audience, many of whom don't know what these, like a lot of older people are saying, oh, why are you recycling these stories? It's like, well, we're reaching a new audience with a new, fresh perspective, many of whom don't even know this story. And so I felt really good. Like, to me, the social justice reason to tell the Bundy story is to arm the next generation of young women that, you got to be very careful about who you trust.
There are layers of this story that do feel fresh because they kind of cross over with more recent cases. But even the DC sniper case, what it reminds me of, there are probably a population of people who don't know that case either. And that wasn't that long ago. Yeah. So in retelling the stories, it's almost a cautionary tale and could probably, most likely, save people because it makes them think about how they go out into the world. Like there was that one story in the series where that gentleman went out with Stacy and he thought, well, we're going to be fine because she's blonde.
Right.
And then we know what happened.
Yeah. Robert Violante, a very sympathetic guy. He said, yeah, don't worry, not going to that borough. Don't worry. She's blonde. And they became a victim, horrifying story.
Well, typically I ask you at the end of in any of these interviews, like what is the piece that's going to haunt you most? But in this case, you actually spoke to the subject or you had an intimate experience with them. So what is going to haunt you the most about this story?
Just how some people feel such rage that they need to take action upon it. And I think, again, that links to these epidemic of school shootings we've had. It's people need to get help. And I don't know if they have the presence of mind to get help in time. So it does, the randomness of these acts and the rationalization for these acts, because obviously Bundy and Dahmer and Gacy were deeply, deeply disturbed. And I think that level of disturbance is less common than just alienation and rage. And we seem to be in a society where, for lots of reasons that we could talk for an hour on, there is more alienation and rage than ever, particularly among young people. And who can blame them? Like, the fucking planet is burning up. Nobody care. Like, values are upside down. We've become a very mean nation in how we're conducting ourselves. We have a massive brain drain. Now I'm getting political. We have a massive brain drain because science projects are being canceled and people are going to where the science is. We live in a bit of an upside down world. So who can blame, besides all the other social media pressures and the unrealistic lives that are portrayed on Instagram that a regular kid just can't feel they measure up. So I think what haunts me about this story is the amount of rage that I think is out there. Like, to me, as I said, the Bundy, Gacy type of killer, yes, they're out there. I'm sure there's still some out there. But to me, that's a pathology that's less common. But there's a lot of disconnected people. And I worry about that,
Well, Conversations with a Killer, The Son of Sam, Tapes premieres July 30th. Would you also talk a little bit for a second about the Tylenol murders? Because you worked on that project, a case that I also covered on this podcast. But fascinating too.
Yeah, I mean, I was the executive producer on that. I did not direct it. It was directed by two great Israeli directors.
Fantastic. They did a great job.
Fantastic job. I mean, we have this ongoing series at Neflix called Cold Case. So the first season was the John Benet Ramsey story that I did. It came out in November and loved. Those Israeli directors were fans of my work and came to me with a half-done show. They were doing it for Showtime. Showtime got canceled. The filmmakers were allowed to take the material back. So they brought it to me and I thought, the timing was perfect. I thought, hey, this would be a great season of Cold Case. So we pitched it to Netflix and they agreed. And so so it was somewhat in the can. I think we pushed them, meaning the filmmakers, to not just focus on James Lewis, but to expand the lens to talk about potential J&J involvement. And interesting, maybe it's because I didn't make the show. I was the executive producer, which I'm still very involved, but like the day-to-day is obviously the director's job. And I'm not even sure this is the reason why, but it's actually the one show that I've done over the years where I really don't know what the answer is. I really don't know I really don't know. I mean, James Lewis did some horrible things, rape, and I believe he murdered his accounting client, whose name escapes me right at this moment. But whether he did this or simply wrote an extortion letter, I don't know. There's some weird things about cyanide being present in the R&D process in the Tylenol lab, and some weird things that happened in the distribution channel. But I'm not convinced that J&J had any responsibility, but I think they did a few things that are worth talking about, but it's a story that most stories I tackle, I have a pretty clear idea of what I think. I really,
Well, I think I join you. That one was
it's still a mystery,
Yeah, I called it mind bending, and I stay with that too. Well, this is, of course, just another great project. I always appreciate your work, and congratulations to your team, who I know work really hard to bring these stories to us. So
I'm just a front man to the rock and roll band called Crime or whatever. And a lot of hardworking people on my team, make it possible. So
thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
The amazing Kate Casey.
I want to thank my fantastic guest and remind you to make sure that you're subscribed to this podcast. Make sure that you leave a 5-star review. Join the Facebook group Reality Life with Kate Casey. You can get my What to Watch list every week by going to katecasey.substack.com. And you can also get bonus episodes on Apple Podcast and on Patreon. Please make sure you follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram at @KatecaseyCA, TikTok it's Kate Casey, and Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky at Kate Casey. Check back tomorrow for an all-new episode.
Wherever you go, whatever they get into, from chill time to everyday adventures, protect your dog from parasites with Credelio Quattro. For full safety information, side effects, and warnings, visit CredeliaQuattroLabel.com. Consult your vet or call 1-888-545-5973. Ask your vet for Credelio Quattro and visit QuattroDog.com.